Now here, we are going to see how do we evaluate trig functions, but now we're not going to use our calculator because now we want to find exact values. On our previous video, we were looking for approximation, which is the decimal representation of the answer, but now we actually want to find the exact values. Now, again, just a small refresher. If we want to find any kind of trig function that is not in your calculator, or in this way, we want to find out any trig value using, or find the exact value of it, we need to know how to rewrite identities using the fundamental identities here. So just a recap, cosecant, you can write as 1 over sine, secant over cosine, tangent, we can write as sine over cosine, and cotangent, we can write as cosine over sine. It is pretty important for you to memorize these 4 identities here. We're going to use them a lot. So cosecant has an S in the middle. So that's just how I remember it. Cosecant has an S, so that's the same as 1 over sine. Secant, if you read it backwards, it's almost like cosine. So that's secant is equals to 1 over cosine. Tangent, sine over cosine. Cotangent is the inverse, so we flip it. If tangent is 1 over cosine, cotangent is cosine over sine. Again, this last identity, it is important, but we're not going to use it that much in this class. So just know these 4 identities. Cosecant, 1 over sine. Secant, 1 over cosine. Tangent, sine over cosine. Cotangent, cosine over sine. Now, why is it important for us to memorize these identities? Because here, they're asking us to find the exact values for the following functions. So let's see. If we want to find the exact values, we need to use our unit circle. That's the only way that we can find exact values of any trig function using our unit circle. So now let's just recap. Cosecant of 315. Again, cosecant is x, sine is y. So we want to find the cosecant of 315. We're going to look at here. Here's 315. If I want to find the cosine of it, I'm going to look at the x coordinate. So that's square root of 2 over 2. So, and that's pretty much it. Because again, here we want to find the exact values. And when you see find the exact values, you need to start thinking about your unit circle. So now, how about tangent? We know that in our unit circle, it's only sine and cosine. Because remember, cosine is x. And sine is y. So if I want to find tangent, we only have x and y's here. So, but I know that tangent, I can write as sine over cosine of 210. Why? Well, we look at our identities. Tangent is sine over cosine. So now, I know how to use sine and I know how to use cosine using our unit circle. So what's the sine of 210? Well, let's look at 210. Here it is. Remember that sine is y. So the sine of 210 is negative 1/2. So now we have negative 1/2 divided by cosine of 210. Here's 210. I want the cosine, so that's negative square root of 3 over 2. So now we have this. Notice that a negative divided by a negative, so that becomes a positive. Well, that's okay. But this is considered your final answer, but you need to simplify this. Now, you got to remember that if you're going to be dividing by a fraction, this is the same as the numerator, which is 1/2, multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. The reciprocal square root of 3 over 2 is 2 over square root of 3. So all I did, we just rewrote it. And notice that the 2's here, they will cancel out. Sorry, I forgot to put a negative here because it was negative square root of 3 over 2. So that's what we have. Negative multiplied by negative, so that's positive. So now this really becomes 1 over square root of 3. But when we're talking about trig, You need to know how to rationalize the denominator. So we need to multiply square root of 3 top and bottom because you never want square root of the denominator. So now this just becomes square root of 3 over 3. It's a little bit more complicated, but this is how you find the exact values. You need to use your unit circle and you need to remember how do we divide by a fraction. So let's see another example here. Now, the cosecant of 240. Again, cosecant, how can I rewrite cosecant? I know that cosecant is 1 over sine. So cosecant of 240, I can rewrite as 1 over the sine of 240. So now it becomes 1 over. Now let's find out what's the sine of 240 degrees. Sine of 240. Let's look, where's 240? Here's 240. If I want the sine of it, I'm going to look at the y value. So that's negative square root of 3 over 2. So it goes negative square root of 3 over 2. So this is what we have. We have 1 divided by square root of 3 over 2. Remember that when you're dividing by a fraction, that's the same as the numerator multiplied by the reciprocal of the denominator. So now this becomes 1 times negative 2 square root of 3. The reciprocal square root of 3 over 2 is 2 square root of 3. So now this becomes just 1 times negative square root of 2 over 3. So that's just negative 2 over square root of 3. But again, you never want the square root in the denominator, so we got to rationalize that. So multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3. And now this becomes negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. This is the exact representation of the cosecant of 240. If you put this in the calculator, you will get the same answer as we did on the previous video. Now let's look at our final example here. Cosecant of 90. Let me make some space here. There's a cosecant of 90 degrees. We have a unit circle here. We want to find the exact value, so we got to use the unit circle. So now we have cosecant. I know that cosecant, that's the same as 1 over sine. So now the cosecant of 90, that's the same as 1 over the sine of 90 degrees. So now let's see, what's the sine of 90 degrees? Here's 90. I want to look at the sine of it. So we look at the y value, which is 1. So now this becomes 1 over, and again, the sine of 90 degrees, we found it to be 1. So that becomes 1 over 1, which is just 1. I think I have an extra problem here on the bottom. Yep. So now one more example before we go. So now let's see the secant of 45. Secant, I know that secant, that's the same as 1 over cosine. So now this becomes 1 over the cosine of 45. So now let's see, what is the cosine of 45? Well, 45 is right here. I know that if I want the cosine, that's the x value. So now this becomes 1 over the cosine of 45 square root of 2 over 2, which is equal to 1 times the reciprocal of the denominator, which is 2 over square root of 2. 1 times anything is what you're multiplying it by. So now this becomes 2 square root of, oops, that's a 2, not a 3. 2 square root of the denominator. You don't want that, so you gotta rationalize that. So now this becomes 2 square root of 2 over 2, which it just becomes square root of 2. So notice that you need to pay attention as to what the direction is. If it says that we need to find the exact value, then we gotta use the unit circle. If it just says to evaluate, then we can use our calculator. There's a small difference there. Now, there will be no entrance ticket, so I'll be seeing you tomorrow.